Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Your Life Unfiltered podcast. In this podcast, we dig deep into the life experiences of our guests to connect the dots between their upbringing and what they're doing today. Today, we have special guest Anvika Jain. Anvika, if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anvika Jain. I am the founder and executive brand designer for Nourish with Anvika, a platform and brand where we revolutionize the way we feel, we live, and love through emotional intelligence. Thank you for having me.
That is awesome. Wow, what an introduction. So, Anvika, if you don't mind going back a few years, just when you were younger, and just tap into some of the early motivations, early inspirations, what led you to do what you're doing today. In some ways, anything that sticks out, any kind of inspiring stories, I think that'll be great.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm going to roll it all the way back to when I was a kid. I think, we all have different dreams and aspirations. For me, it was really interesting because there was like 1 month where I wanted to be a cashier because I loved the way the cash typed. And then another month, I turned a piece of paper and folded it in half and created a laptop. And I was, treating my patients as a doctor. And then the next month, I took my favorite blanket, wrapped it around like a sari, and I was a Bollywood actress. And I was just in my imagination so much growing up. And, I think that really foreshadowed a lot of who I am today, looking hindsight 2020, of jack of all trades. And I find myself really excited because I think, when having these conversations with you, even it's part of who I am. And it became part of my two favorite words, which is to learn and to experience. And I think that all started since I was a little girl, just doing all these different jobs.
Got it. So, did you used to participate in different types of societies or hobbies while you were in school as well as in college, related to what you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of what I do now is soft skills that I built up in school, and it was not really directly related, but it shaped a lot of my personality today. And, I was always very studious, academically driven, but I was also very athletic. So I played ice hockey for 4 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was on a soccer team. I was a street dancer, and I, took dancing to, another level throughout my life. And I think all of these different, learnings and experiences really taught me that a lot of the leadership skills and the skills to be self-disciplined and especially intrinsically motivated, because I think that's the key thing that you need to be an entrepreneur, which is what I'm focusing on 100% today. So a lot of that has shaped who I am. But I think on a deeper level, at a young age, I kind of figured out that, we all experience things so differently, even though we're doing the same thing. And that always blew my mind. And that awareness that I had at such a young age, I kind of realized that there's this sense of search and discovery. And that discovery, I call it my remarkable self. And it's it's kind of like a treasure map, and my life is this treasure map, and I'm just trying different things, and sometimes I have to detour, and sometimes it's a huge milestone. And this treasure map has actually led me to where I am today and got me so much closer to figuring out my remarkable self. And I'm at this stage now that I want to share that to the world, and with my goal to hopefully harmonize the world one day. So a lot of soft skills, a lot of below the surface things that happened, and I give a lot of credit to that and a lot of respect to that.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what you say is actually a very interesting thing, because it's funny how you can never connect those dots moving forward. You can only connect those dots looking backward. And Deepan's laughing because he knows exactly where I got that from.
Yeah, it's one of those Steve Jobs interview that we keep on quoting. I think it makes so much sense, in whatever we do in life, just individually as a society, in whatever sense you kind of want to think about it, in your context as well, and we kind of fits rightly that you can only connect the dots looking backwards, because those are the experiences actually led to become who you are today in many ways, right? Or just those experiences shaped you in doing things that you end up doing today. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%.
Uh,
And it's funny because when you look at this and knowing this knowledge now, we don't have to put so much pressure on what we're doing presently because we know it's going to connect a dot in the future. So why are we putting so much pressure and understanding the dot today? And so when we kind of liberate ourselves from that, then we actually get to experience life. So I think there's like a full beautiful circle there.
Yeah, that absolutely right. I 100% agree with that because I think a lot of it is you don't realize what you're learning, but then you're creating that foundation and that framework that can lead to something you're doing in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like for you, it's developing the leadership skill, right? Having diverse interests and trying to handle a lot of different things and all the skills that the talents and stuff you develop in that process can help you in all facets of life going forward.
100%. I love soft skills. Those are my favorite skills to learn. And I think that's why I got the success that I've gotten thus far. And I'm excited for what's to come in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. So I did want to dig a little bit deeper on some of the experience that you mentioned. So you mentioned ice hockey, right? Was is there a reason it was ice hockey in particular as opposed to other sports, or like what really attracted you to playing ice hockey?
Yeah, great question. A lot of cultural assimilation because I'm French Canadian. So growing up in Quebec, ice hockey was everywhere, and it was so popular, so common. And my neighbor actually, approached my mom and was like, "Hey, my daughter's doing ice hockey. It's like really been great for her. You should, have her try it." And I didn't even know how to skate, and I remember I was pretty young, so I was like maybe like 9 or 10 when I started. And my first class, because I didn't know how to skate, they put me in the first level, and my entire class were 5-year-olds. And when you think of that age group, I'm like double their size, and I'm here like just learning how to skate. And I've always had, again, this desire to learn and to experience. So I was having such a great time. And then, lo and behold, I got better, and then I got put into my age group, and then I became captain of my age group, and that was like the year we won our tournament. And all of that was so much fun. And I remember just going to practices like all over, the province, and learning the skills and the strength physically and emotionally to take on ice hockey. And that was like one of the biggest stepping stones at such a young age. I think that defined a lot of me having the courage to do the things that I've done and make the decisions I've done so far.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for that.
So, moving on from Anvika from there. So, obviously, you're big into emotional intelligence and emotional coaching. So, given all of the experiences that you had until that point, like how did you get into that? How did you decide that you want to focus more on this side of things and not something else?
Yeah, that's such a remarkable question because I think the answer is so deeply rooted in not only like my environment, but I think the person that I am. And
Hmm.
everyone's so different. I think that's what makes life so beautiful because we have all these different talents. But for me, up and grown up in a very heavy South Asian culture, with my mom being so amazing at infusing that into our livelihood, there were different priorities, and the priorities were a lot more like IQ driven. And
Hmm.
I used to, grow up, and I used to always say thank you and please. And, I was very vocal about these like little words that meant words of affirmation, and gratitude. And I remember one time my aunt's like, "Stop saying thank you. It's not." That like blew my mind because I was like, if I don't say thank you, how are you going to know I appreciate you? And I think that was like the moment where I looked at myself and I'm like, I think a little differently. And I think this is an area I really want to explore, and empathy and like all these different emotionally driven skills was not prioritized. And it just blew my mind as to why it's not, because I remember just getting along with people better, doing better in school and my grades when I did prioritize. And EQ is honestly the reason I'm successful, genuinely, hands down. I Everything that I applied for, worked for, I was underqualified, and EQ is the reason I got them. And I think, my life experience and I guess like quote unquote evidence that I've shown myself of how powerful EQ can be, there's no way I can't, try to teach others because I genuinely have this desire for people to thrive alongside me.
That's great. That's great. Could you tell us a little bit about, well, actually, let me start with the name, right? Nourish, was it?
With Anvika.
Yeah, Nourish with Anvika, right? So can you tell us a little bit about Nourish with Anvika? Where was it, did the inspiration behind that name come from? You know, how that's going, what's next for that realm of business, etc.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Nourish with Anvika, it took me some time to put a name together. There's a plethora of names you can choose, including the word plethora. So just anything you can pick for a brand name. And growing up, my name has always been something that stood out to people. My name is pretty unique. It's a fusion of Hindi and French. And there's a part of me growing up that I thought my name was confusing, but then I would always feel so warm inside when people remembered my name. And I realized that I think part of what I want to drive to the world is part of who I am. And so my name is the best way of demonstrating that. So I wanted to infuse my name into my brand. And then I also wanted to be what I genuinely wanted to do. And I want people to nourish with me. So it kind of like went from let's do something super abstract to like, let's just do something very clear cut of genuinely what do I want to do with this business. And I want people to nourish with Anvika. So that's how it came about. And till this day, I'm, I feel really proud of, the brand and the name and what it encompasses because it's so true to the mission of it. So that's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's
Great.
a powerful story. I like that.
Thanks.
Yeah. It encompasses your mission as well as your identity in like one kind of phrase. So that makes a lot of sense to kind of provide that context.
Plus, it
Um,
establishes you as the brand, right? So essentially, the business is you're the face of the brand, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, everything that I do is, I love to be an educator. So I think it makes sense, and maybe that'll expand in the future. But for now, what we have is Nourish with Anvika, and I'm cool with it.
so Anvika, I want to go back to one thing that you said in the previous statement, that all the jobs that you applied for, you were underqualified.
Mm-hmm.
So I should tell our listeners that you actually worked at Google as well for a little bit. So what was that role, and how did you go about getting it? I believe you were working with the recruiting team. Maybe you can provide more context there.
Yeah, that's awesome work at Google. I'd love to learn more about your experience. So my journey at Google was half a decade, and it was quite remarkable. Really just a dream, and I wanted to keep it a dream, and that's why I left. But if I reel it back a little bit, I started at Google when I was 21, and like so thankful for that, so grateful for that to have gotten the opportunity to work there. And like you said, Deepam, I started in the recruiting space, and when I started, I actually started as a contractor. So as a contractor, I'm just out of college, I have no idea what's going on. I really felt like an internship because I didn't have work experience to back it off on. So I had this like short-term headspace in my mind. But I think in this headspace is what brought me to convert. And at that time, don't quote me on it, but it was about a 5% conversion rate. And so the likelihood to convert was so low. But I think me being in my mind and being at the age that I was like, I'm just going to soak everything up and really just experience what it is to be a 21-year-old, new into Austin, Texas, new into Google. Like, I want to just take it all in. And
Mm-hmm.
through doing that, I think I was able to fully experience my role. And it fully got me to the point where I was qualified to get converted to re-interview and get, the full-time job. So then I get converted and I go into California, new experience, always and forever will be a dream. And I started becoming a subject matter expert in this role. So I started coaching others in this role because this role is very metric driven. So either you swim or you sink. And then COVID hit. And, I think COVID impacted everyone in such a deep way. And for me, it was my career. And I was like, I think I need to pivot. I need to learn something new. I've hit my benchmark here. So I'm like looking at roles, and there's this program manager role that opened. And my program management experience was very little. I did like projects with people in recruiting. I did a 20% project. I know Deepam would know about this, but it's basically you get the chance to work outside of your core role just to learn. And so my 20% project actually brought me to London, which was insane. And that project was a little bit of project management. So that's all I was going off of when I applied for this program management role. And this is where, I reel it back in. EQ was the reason why I got it. And to the point where I think there were about 60 to 70 applicants and only 2 people got the position. And in my mind, even if I was overqualified, there had to be more to get this position. EQ for, from my experience. So I start this role. I'm a program manager for the promotions team, and promotion hits every single Googler, and we're talking about like 20,000 people, 200,000 people. And so I'm like large scale doing work, and then I end up leading a promotion process for a subgroup of people, which is tech L1 to 4. So it's everyone in levels 1 to 4 that are considered tech. I was leading their entire promotion process, about 40,000 people. So I'm here like doing this work, and I'm learning so much. I'm experiencing so much. And there came a point where I felt the same. I like hit this mark, and I was like, I think it's time for me to change. And that's when I ended up actually leaving Google and pursuing this full time.
Okay, wow. Lots of stuff to dig deep into there, but I'll try to keep it a few things. So you mentioned that EQ helped you to land a lot of these roles that you're underqualified for, right? Are there any specific aspects of EQ that worked in your favor? Like, is there something like, for example, if there's someone else out there, one of our listeners that wants to get a role and land a role that they're underqualified for, what suggestions or tips do you have from an EQ perspective to help them to land that role?
Yeah, I would say storytelling, just looking at it very objectively. You're meeting these people most probably for the first or second time. So they know nothing about you, but you have a solid 30 to 45 minutes one-on-one time with them. And if you take that as an opportunity of honor, like this person sitting there learning about my life and my experiences fully, then when you change that perspective and you're able to tell a story that is really corresponding to who you are and the things that you've done, that changes the game, and connection between people is the key to success in anything, because we need people to thrive. So I did coach actually a lot of people, helping them through their career. And so I would sit with them and we would do interview prep. And a lot of this prep would be like, tell me the story end to end, and we'll trim it wherever necessary, but I want to hear end to end, because that's when you connect with people. And so when I would interview, I would tell them like I'm telling a short story. That would be my answer to a question.
Oh,
Wow.
interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So completely agree with you that stories are powerful, right? But like, are there specific elements within the storytelling that help to make a story more compelling? So
Yeah.
I know that vulnerability always helps a little bit with storytelling. You talk about something that a hardship you went through, etc. But besides vulnerability, are there specific triggers or elements that help to make that story more powerful? Any suggestions
Yeah.
from that realm?
I think it's literally the STAR method, but more like more concise to your personal being versus like, let's kind of just like define it. What I mean by that is you want to set the scene, and the scene should always be like an obstacle you had to overcome, because when you overcome an obstacle, that's when you're able to show your characteristics. Because if you're able to overcome an obstacle through that story, you tell how you did it, and that how shows your leadership skills, shows your problem solving skills, thinking outside the box. And so you want to always start with like the situation, the problem you're overcoming, and then the from it. But I think the kicker is when you exceed someone's expectation. So let's say there's a problem and to do XYZ, but then you end up doing ABC, which like exceeds your expectation. That right there, I think, is a gold to a question being asked, because that shows so much of your characteristics. Because a lot of job like character and like scope can be learned, but how you come to work and how you get work done, that's what they're trying to find for a lot of roles.
I
Right.
see. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So it's almost you're going to use the story about how you overcame hardships, etc., to get the interviewer to like you at a personal level, while simultaneously showing how you're qualified for the role, because you're showing the leadership potential, you're showing technical skills when it comes to we call problem resolution. You're showing your logic behind the approach, etc. So it's like you're basically substituting the lack of experience through by showing real world experience of how you've solved problems and have proactively made decisions to value a cause or to add additional value. Is that like a good way to think about it?
Yeah, exactly. And even going with the perspective that the interviewer may or may not like you, but at least they'll respect you. I think that's like a big point, because I think a lot of folks go in being like, I really hope they like me, and I really hope like I say what they want to hear. But that's like, we can't read minds. So you have to just go in very authentic to who you are. And then another thing, like I guess like strategically, is forming your stories. And I know you didn't ask this question, I'm just elaborating here, but forming the story as a good way of doing it is building the bridge between the characteristics that they're looking for. So looking at the job role, literally just looking at the job role, there's so much gold there, and just connecting what they're looking for to a story that complements the characteristics they're looking for. And a lot of times it is soft skills.
Okay, that's really fascinating. It's very different than how I've thought about the interviewing process. So it's very fascinating to learn about. Thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and there's some of the strategies that you mentioned. Obviously, those are excellent for the interview process, but I feel those also, help you succeed in your day-to-day job as well, right? So, for example, the one thing you mentioned, hey, if you were expected to do a X, Y, and Z, but you actually go above and beyond and do even more, I think that will help you, just do well in the current job itself, like, or maybe whatever job you're working on. So I 100% agree. Like those strategies, they definitely go beyond just the interview and interview relationship, and it can help you achieve a lot more.
Well
Makes a
said.
lot of sense.
I agree.
Yeah, and I
Um,
know there's multiple components of EQ as well, right? So I can totally see EQ helps in many different aspects of career, personal life, etc. But do you want to talk a little bit about the different types of or different elements of EQ?
Yeah, absolutely. So EQ as a practitioner is, very much a full cycle of internal growth and external growth. And so what I mean by that is like working internally with like motivation, empathy, and like really being able to understand self-manage your emotions, and then going externally. And excuse me, I forgot to mention that externally is empathy, internally self-management, but externally just being very good at how do you take on people's emotions and be able to work with them, not against them, and also being able to not absorb that. And so when you are able to communicate with someone for who they are, the whole game changes, And so instead of like trying to have them fit into the box that you've created for yourself, you create a box for them. And that's kind of like the analogy I love to use, because the box will look so different. But if you can go with that headspace, you'll also be able to understand them. So emotional intelligence is basically that. But then when you take that in and you go internally, it's like, how do you create your own box? And what does that look like? And so it's very in depth. And then to kind of think of it as a service, my majority of my clients came into different categories. Career was a big one, relationships. I'm also a certified nutrition coach, so I did a lot of health and wellness. And even in all those aspects, EQ was the main force to yield results, to yield a habit form, to yield a different lifestyle. Um, and then sometimes people just come up to me and be like, hey, I just want to do better. And so when we're talking through it, you kind of fall into areas and gaps in people's life that typically are within those three buckets.
got it. Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Um,
Um,
so I
yeah,
know Deepam wanted to switch gears, but I actually had one other question I want to ask
go
about
for it.
Nourish with Anvika. So, I know you switched from, working for someone else to going out on your own, right? So what, besides the pandemic, was there any other trigger that made you feel more comfortable about it? And then the second piece of that question is, how is that going? It's like, how is the client acquisition process looking? Is there anything you can share about that for listeners that might be interested in understanding, like if you go into some kind of like service oriented business, how do you acquire clients?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to answer them as two separate questions. The first one, I want to dive a little deeper in this one because I think this completely revolutionized my life. And so thank you for asking, Hitu. I would say, when we grow up, no matter what it is, our consciousness is very subjective to our environment as we grow up. And so, growing up in a very deeply French Canadian, South Asian environment, which is a beautiful mishmash of things, there's a lot of different types of conditioning that can happen. And big part of what got me to where I am today is being able to understand what is a condition and what is a desire. And so, like, if I were to, like, reel it back a little bit, I remember when I was in high school, I had to figure out how to pay for college. So I started tutoring business, and that helped me get into college. And then I worked my butt off to get into this accelerated medical program where I was, 3 years in bachelor's, 4 years in medical school. And in my sophomore year of college, I was working 3 jobs. I was a TA for chem. I was working at the gym. I was like a tutor. And then I realized, I was like, what is this common ground? And this common ground is actually people. I loved building interpersonal relationships with people. I loved the whole aspect of storytelling. And then it got me interested in like, how do people brand? Why are certain things more attractive than others? So I made a really big decision then, and I dropped the medical program and I pursued PR. And I still graduated in 3 years, and I actually graduated 2 minors as well. But in that moment, I felt like I ticked one of the conditions that I was like conditioned to live in, which is there's only like 4 or 5 sets of career that'll make you successful. And then, as you go in, as I went in with my life, in my personal aspect, I knew what I wanted in a relationship, but I wanted to explore what that looked like. And again, being part of growing up for me, I was so enthralled in Indian culture and I loved it. But that's also what I knew in terms of what the future can look like. So I really wanted to open up my mind. And then now, my long-term boyfriend is a Black man, and I'm extremely, thankful for that. And he uplifts me so much more than I've ever been uplifted by someone else. And again, I felt like another tick of conditioning has been ticked off. And then finally, I think a big stepping stone from all of this was, I was working on my job at Google, and, you're working for Google, man. Like, this is like, everyone's telling me like, it's part of your identity, you're a Googler, and how amazing it is. And it took a lot of work to dissociate Google as part of my identity and be like, I think I'm going to leave. And that was another tick of a condition. When you're a good company, you want to stay there, but I kind of pivoted. And I think I tell this story because I think there's a thin line between conditioning and desire. And if you can figure out what you've been conditioned to think and what you desire, it can completely revolutionize your life, but also give you a lot of freedom. So all of this being said, I think a long-winded answer to your question is these are the elements that got me to do this entrepreneurial work and to do something very altruistic in my life. Even if it's maybe for X amount of time, I had the opportunity to do it. So I decided to do that.
Amazing. All right. You state back what you said. It's systematically identifying and removing the social conditioning that may have been built up over time to get you in the right mindset to pursue your passions.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. And being able to be very true with yourself. And sometimes that's going to be hard because you're going to be like, well, I don't know, is this me? Is it not me? But all you can do is try to experience it. And as you experience, you will learn if this is you or not you.
All right. That is an amazing story. Thank you for that. I have never thought about social conditioning in that way before, but that's really fascinating. So it's like that systematic approach could basically change your life, is what you're telling us. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what it is, being part of just living in a society, and and all this being said, it's so beautiful and it's so important to be part of a society. But if you can make it the way that you want for your personal life and your individualism, then society or not, you're loving everyone around you, and that is key.
Wow, that's awesome. So I actually have a question which is slightly off topic. You grew up amidst 2 or 3 cultures, right? So you South Asian as well as French Canadian. What is one thing that is common between the 2 culture, and what is one thing that is like absolutely different across 2 cultures?
Wow, this is an amazing question. I actually never been asked this question before. I think what's common is like family minded. Like French Canadian culture is very, prideful of who they are, where they come from, who their people are. And I see exactly the same thing in Indian culture. And it builds a sense of like loyalty and the sense of like knowing who you are. And that's like really remarkable. But I'd say what's different is a lot of things. Language being one, it's a very different language. And just like even relationships, like Indian culture is very big on like when you get, let's say you get married, families are getting married, and it's very big on, how does the whole family like each other, decide each other's like future for those people. In French culture, it's not as heavy in that way. It's a lot more love driven. And so I grown up with both, watching like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, and then going out, on the streets and like watching people get married because they love each other, and that's it. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It was really different.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing basically is that Indian culture is big more on tradition, and maybe French Canadian culture is more big on legacy, for example, right? So, but both are important in their own way. Okay, that makes
Exactly.
a lot of sense.
Well said.
Cool. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit. So, and want to tie back to the question that Kitul was asking before about customer acquisition. So I noticed that you also recently started as a realtor, right? So do you want to talk a little bit more about that? What's the motivation behind it? And, connect that with the customer acquisition, if you will. That would be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. And thank you for resurfacing that question. I did not answer that. I would say that for real estate, this has been such a fun journey because I actually started investing in property before I became a realtor. And so I started investing in property back 5 years ago in Austin. And I was able to accrue multiple properties through my journey of investing. And I realized that this is something that's accessible then, maybe a little harder now, but accessible then in Austin. And growing up in New York or even Montreal, these are very old cities. So it wasn't as accessible where I grew up. So it was a big shift for me. And this shift was like a big opportunity for me to learn something new, which was real estate. And so I came in being an investor first and then a realtor second, which I think is atypical. But that really motivated me to want to be able to help people. And then tying this all together, now as a realtor, I actually am less interested in helping people invest and more interested in helping people find the lifestyle that's best for them in Austin. So what I do is actually specialize in luxury leasing. So Austin is growing so much and it's on the map and there's so many amazing things. I currently live in a really cool area myself, and it's like I couldn't have this opportunity if I didn't know about it. And so I want to help people understand what kind of lifestyle they want and what kind of lifestyle they can actually, in reality, actualize because you live in Austin. And so it really fuses in where EQ meets real estate. And I think that's like where I like to dance on that line. And with customer acquisition, I'd say all of this being said, it goes back to what we talked about interview prep, like when I meet people and I'm able to understand their story. So in this case, I'm the interviewer and I'm very open to understanding their stories, then I'm able to help them accordingly. And I think that in itself just organically builds loyalty, and that in itself organically spreads around. And I think customer acquisition has been such an organic process because it's been like a second hand, more like a positive consequence to this way or this desire for me to learn about people's stories.
I
That's awesome.
really like that. And the reason why is because you found a way to combine two disparate businesses together. And it actually also plays into the name of your coaching business, the Nourish with Anvika, right? Because basically you're enabling people to live the luxurious lifestyles that they deserve, which falls into providing them with the foundational blocks to thrive, which ties into the name of your brand, Nourish with Anvika. So I like that because it actually adds to your story. And I'm actually realizing the significance of the name even more because Nourish with Anvika seems like an all-encompassing name. So with that name alone, you can also pivot and go into other things as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Very
was
intelligent.
thinking about the same thing. I was thinking about exactly the same thing. So basically, you cover, aspect of mental health, obviously through the emotional intelligence coaching, but also, physical aspect of it through the real estate. So you cover the entire spectrum with Nourish, with Anvika.
Yeah.
You can start a fitness coaching program as well, and still fit
Yeah,
under
the
Nourish with Anvika.
opportunities are endless. I mean, to be honest, between you and me and the listeners at this point, I even like would love to even in the future maybe even start a dance company because I'm a very passionate dancer. And so there's all these things you can do to create self-expression in people.
Yeah.
And that's a big element you mentioned, Kato, that I forgot to mention when you asked me about my brand, is I wanted something that was an umbrella. I wanted something because I'm myself a jack of all trades, as I'm sure y'all are picking up on. I wanted to exemplify that through my brand too.
Yeah, it's interesting because in one of our first episodes, we had a lengthy discussion about that exact same thing about being a jack of all trades. So actually, Deepam and I are the same way. We're a jack of all trades. So there's a famous quote, which our listeners are probably tired of because we've said it so many times now. But basically, you know the quote, a jack of all trades, master of none? So
Mm-hmm.
that's actually not the full quote. Like the full quote is, a jack of all trades may be a master of none, but it's always better than a master of one.
Oh, wow. Valid. Plus one.
Actually, I was going through your website, Anvika, and I noticed that you do obviously emotional intelligence coaching, but there's also lifestyle coaching such as on career and nutrition, purpose, relationship. So I know we talked a lot about your motivations as well as why you did what you did. But if you were to summarize your purpose in or life's purpose in one or two lines, how would you do that?
Yeah, I would say, my like spitball answer to like what my answer, like my gut feeling answer is to revolutionize the way we love, we live, and we feel. That is like what wakes me up in the morning, gets me excited to do this work. But my overarching goal is to, bring back humanity in people and to harmonize a better world, in general. I think, social media, everything has pros and cons, right? But for me, social media, as I use it for Nourish with Anvika, full platform, and I'm sure y'all feel it too through your podcast, of how many people can be impacted. And, we see a lot of the negatives too, but if we can be a little bit of positive in this virtual cyber world, it is really massive scale. And so I am really excited to continue to share like nuggets of wisdom or nuggets of EQ that I'm learned to continue to help people. So I would say my day-to-day action oriented to revolutionizing the way we love and the way we live. But my overarching like vision is to really create harmony in this world.
That's
Okay,
beautiful.
amazing. So I actually had a question for you because it seems like you've really got a good handle on the branding piece, the storytelling piece. So our podcast, Your Life Unfiltered, right? So the messaging behind our podcast is to interview people from all walks of life. If you were to create some concept behind the branding of it, how would you approach branding a podcast of our type?
Ooh, that's such a great question. And it's an exciting question for me because I love to brand. That's my expertise. Um, I think there's so many intersectionalities to your mission. And what I mean by that is the impact is immense. You're going in with this ability to touch so many lives through giving a platform for people to share their lives. So I think inevitably that creates a lot of different pockets of interest. And either that's something you want to specialize in or, like me, become an umbrella. But I think, a big part is understanding what type of walk of life, what type of people, demographically as well, what type of because that all is conducive to their background. And what happens is when you understand someone's background, you'll also know that there's thousands of others that can understand their background too and even relate to it. So you get the opportunity to touch even more lives when you kind of like diversify your portfolio and you learn from different people. So the first thing that came to my mind, honestly, was Humans of New York. I don't know if y'all have ever followed them.
Yes, yes, I've seen that.
So when I think about your mission statement, I thought of the Humans of New York, and I think a big reason I thought about that was because they create a platform to genuinely just take a picture of someone and just have them tell their story or any struggle they're going through. But you're doing this in a completely different medium, which is through a podcast. But if I were to brand it, I'd maybe use, companies or brands like that as inspiration. That's what I would think.
Got
Thank
it.
you. I've not thought of Humans of New York, but that's a great parallel. If we can convert the
Yeah.
success of Humans of New York in its medium to the podcast medium, either from a content style perspective or even maybe taking elements of it into the podcast platform, I can definitely see that as a good source of inspiration. So thank you for that. I've not thought
Yeah,
of
for
that.
sure. And I'd love to
Yeah.
continue brainstorming with y'all if y'all are ever interested because I love stuff.
That would be awesome. That would be extremely helpful for us. Okay, so Anvika, actually, we would like to move to the next segment of our discussion today. We call it rapid fire. So, as the name suggests, we have a few questions, and we like to go through them one by one. Once you're ready, we can just jump right in.
Alrighty, game on.
All right, let's go. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Okay, interesting. Mountains or beaches?
Okay, this might be a cop out answer, but summer beaches, fall mountains.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Morning person or night owl?
Morning person, but aspiring night owl. I
Oh,
feel like I'm
that's a
getting
new
cop out
one.
answers.
Yeah, that's
That's a
that
new
that is a
one.
new one. Yeah, usually it's
I've
one or the
we've
other.
always yeah we've always heard the other way. Night owl, but trying to be a morning person. How early are we talking? Morning in the morning.
So I'm not gonna lie. For a few months, I was a 5 a.m.er where I'd
That's
wake up
tough.
at 5 and like get the day started. But now, I guess quote unquote, I got lazier. But I think I just became more normal, and I now wake up around like 7. And
Oh,
started.
okay.
Uh, but I'm trying to be more of a night owl because I feel like as I continue to learn about EQ and as I continue to like use myself as a prototype in my learnings, our minds are extremely creative in the mornings but also at night. And when I find myself just like letting go of like whatever noise is in my mind, I become so creative in the nighttime too. So I'm trying to equally implement my night owlness.
That that is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard of that before actually. So what I've heard is that after you have a very busy day, you've had so much experiences throughout the day and have been exposed to so many different environments. At the end of the day, when you're extremely exhausted, your mind makes connections that it wouldn't ordinarily do because of your experiences throughout. And so from what I heard is that if you start doing creative stuff at the very end of a very busy day, your brain starts to take shortcuts and it starts to think of things differently than you normally would. So I can definitely see some parallels with what you're saying about feeling more creative at night, and it might be based on the same reason, something else. I don't know, but that's very
That's
interesting.
amazing. And let me know what y'all think because y'all, record pretty late at night and y'all are doing such amazing work outside of your day to day job. So maybe you can use yourselves as prototypes of this idea. But yes, totally agree.
For me, I am somewhere in between because I'm on the West Coast and most of my team is actually on the East Coast. So I'm also like up at 6:30, 7 a.m. every day. Even on weekends, because I like to maintain that consistency. So
Mhm.
I want to get better, become a morning person, but I don't think I have the bandwidth for that right now, given all the work that I do. But anyway, so coming back to our discussion here, what's your favorite comfort food?
I feel like my answers are always so cop out, but I actually thought of cuisines, and let me know if that's an incorrect answer. But I thought of Indian and Thai. I mean, you
There is no
tell me
incorrect
something
answer in this.
indulgent, and I say yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What's your favorite virtue in others?
Care. That's beautiful what you can see people do just because they care.
Got it. Okay. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Okay, I don't know if this is considered a pet peeve, but have y'all heard of tryptophobia before?
Tryptophobia?
I have
Tryptophobia?
not.
Is that
No,
spiders? No, no, that's not
no.
spiders, right? Is it like some kind of insect of some kind or animal of some kind?
No, it's actually gonna blow y'all's mind then. I didn't know I had it until I learned that it's actually a thing. Um, it's being disgusted and feeling a high level of discomfort for like you're gonna be talking about it. Like really close circles or holes or like cracks. Like if you looked up tryptophobia, they describe it a lot better than I am, but it's like when you think of like a honeycomb or you think of like certain things that are very congested and
Hmm.
repetitive, oh, it like people have an adverse reaction to it, including myself, as y'all have seen.
Oh, wow. Okay, I've
Um,
not heard of that before. Yeah, that's different.
yeah. So when
Okay.
I always play outside, but when at the park when like there's mud and it's dry and then there's cracks in it, oh, I like my teeth would start grinding and I would like clench up, and I was like, this is weird. Like, why am I reacting to cracks? And then it's kind of like watching a car accident. I would just keep looking at it and keep getting more and more tense and more uncomfortable. And then I think I was just having drinks with a friend, and they're the one that told me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's tryptophobia. I have it too, but for her, it's tiny holes. And when she sees tiny holes, she actually vomits." So it was like really interesting. I felt like, wow, I didn't know this with myself, but yeah, can't do it. I have tryptophobia, and if any of the listeners have this type of, now you know.
Wow, that's a new one. Definitely. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next question. What's your secret superpower that people don't really know about?
It's a great question. Um, so my manager told me this once at Google, um, and it really like it got me thinking, and I was really actually very humbled and thankful for what he said. But I was like finishing up a project, and he like looked at me and he was like, "Anvika, you're hard on the work but very easy with the people," and that like meant a lot to me because it meant that you can be both, and he basically, as he elaborated, said like you're very dedicated to your work, you do really good work, and you like are a strong leader, you know when to say yes, but you are so good with people too, and that's a leadership skill that a lot of people don't have. And I looked at him and I was like, is that a superpower? Because I feels like and I was very thankful for that feedback.
That is absolutely fascinating. Okay, what's a superpower you wish you had?
So are we talking like any superpower or like something realistic?
Any superpower will do.
Okay. I wish I had telepathy. I would love to just snap my fingers and just be anywhere I wanted. Like, I feel like I want to be near a beach. Let me just go to Hawaii for a day and just come back.
Oh,
Nice.
teleportation, you mean? Got it. Okay.
Oh yes, that's what I said. That's not what I said. That's
Yeah.
what.
So when you said telepathy, I thought you were gonna connect it with like EQ related stuff. But then I got it with
Oh
the
yeah,
yeah.
I
I
feel
was
like
thinking the same.
you should have been my PR agent. Keep doing like, no, no, keep that, keep telepathy.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, actually that brings us to the end of our rapid fire round. So the next question is, it's not really rapid fire, but what's been your biggest accomplishment in the last 1 or 2 years?
From my heart, I would say what I'm doing now. You know, having the courage to leave such an incredible company and starting to do something genuinely just out of the ability to be like, you know what, I just want to take a pause and do something completely altruistic. And, if organically it becomes, this like massive, incredible brand, amazing, but that's not what wakes me up every day to do the work. What makes me up every day to do the work is contributing to the world as a form of an educator that I didn't get to do before. And I
Hmm.
think taking the courage to be like, I'm going to leave a good paying job, a good work, and just kind of go on my own and like work with my savings and just like figure it out has empowered me in a way that I felt before. And that's when I left the medical program to pursue PR. And it's kind of like taking that big risk and knowing that like things are going to work out. So I'd say right now, from my heart, this is my biggest accomplishment. But if I were to write it on paper, I'd say landing a job at Google.
Nice.
Amazing.
All right, so Anvika, I did want to give you a chance to promote any socials or websites that you may have. I will plug for you your Instagram page at Nourish with Anvika. But besides the Instagram page, is there any other platforms you'd like to promote for our listeners here?
Yeah, thank you, Keito. If y'all are interested in, learning more about EQ tips, I tend to make these like short, sweet videos on things people tend to go through day to day, both on Instagram, Nourish with Anvika, TikTok, Nourish with Anvika, the same handle for everything. My website is the same. And I will continue to, promote EQ and watch out for more real estate oriented spaces. So if you all are interested in living in Austin or already live here and want to, see how you want to level up your lifestyle, I can definitely help you with that. So
Awesome.
All right,
All right.
fantastic.
So So quickly, one question before we wrap, Anvika. So you mentioned your name means something in French as well as in Hindi. Do you mind expanding that on that a little bit? Like, what is that?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Thanks for remembering. So my name is a fusion, but it actually has a significance in Hindi. Anvi, not Anvika as a whole, but Anvi apparently means friendship. So it's very suited.
Oh, okay.
What about French?
The French side is more of the way it's pronounced. So
Ah, I see.
yeah,
Okay,
because my name is spelled Anvika, but the way it's pronounced as Anvika is the French part of it.
got it. Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining this podcast episode. It was such a fun experience speaking with you and learning about your story. For our listeners here, if you guys are not already connected to the Your Life Unfiltered podcast, please be sure to give us a follow on Instagram. It's at Your Life Unfiltered. And for any streaming service that you're using, if you could leave us a review, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you
Amazing.
so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for all the amazing work y'all are doing.
Thank you. Bye.